For 20 years, Rockstar Games has operated under a regime of brutal sacrifice. They have spent decades building fully functional, popular game mechanics, only to have them permanently deleted in the following installment. During the early 2000s, titles like Vice City featured expansive interior environments, including explorable shopping malls and airports with drivable interiors. Yet when the franchise moved forward, these immersive spaces were stripped out entirely. This pattern continued as the deep character simulation of the San Andreas era, the gyms, the bodyweight mechanics, and the neighborhood gang wars, was discarded to make room for the next generation of technology. Even features from smaller spin-off titles, such as protection rackets and beachfront lifeguard missions, failed to migrate into the primary billion-dollar sequels. These omissions were the result of a cold mathematical trade-off. For 2 decades, developers have been hitting an invisible wall of software and hardware limits, forced to delete beloved features to ensure the game could actually run. The first major bottleneck appeared as the industry demanded a radical leap in visual fidelity. Rockstar transitioned from the primitive, chunk-based 3D models of the early PlayStation 2 era to much more advanced mesh-based character models. These new models used a continuous surface to create smoother, more realistic appearances. This visual upgrade came with a high logic cost. The developers could no longer utilize the body dismemberment mechanics from previous titles, because recoding those systems for mesh models exceeded the available time and budget. Technical requirements also claimed environmental features. The mechanical logic required to operate a functional drawbridge, one that timed its movement with passing boats, was cut to save resources. In this era, every step toward higher visual fidelity directly reduced the budget available for dynamic, interactive world systems. By 2004, Rockstar pushed for unprecedented scale, building a map that contained 3 full cities and a massive array of character-driven RPG mechanics. Achieving this geographical size required hollowing out the world. The dense malls and airport interiors seen previously were removed to prioritize the rendering of the vast outdoor landscape. The transition to high definition introduced the Rockstar Advanced Game Engine, or RAGE. It was designed to prioritize physics and lighting realism over everything else. This new engine's physics logic was extremely resource-heavy. In its early stages, the engine could not handle a massive geographical map without causing the game's performance to drop below playable levels. To maintain stability, the developers gutted the game's scope. Nearly 40% of the map was deleted, airplanes were grounded, and underwater exploration was removed entirely. Mastering a more sophisticated physics engine forced the developers to shrink the world's boundaries to keep the software functional. By the time Trevor Phillips appeared in 2013, Rockstar had optimized the engine enough to bring back airplanes and underwater environments. However, the most interactive systems from the past were still missing. This time, the developers weren't fighting their own software. They were fighting the physical memory of the consoles. The PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 only possessed 512 megabytes of RAM. This small pool of memory had to store every texture and object the player saw. Allocating that tiny budget to render a massive geographical world left almost zero room for complex background logic. Systems like neighborhood gang warfare and highly interactive interiors were purged simply to save the precious few megabytes of RAM required to keep the map visible. Even the most efficient engineering eventually hits the hard, physical limitations of the hardware it's built for. That 20-year era of forced compromise has ended. The technological bottlenecks that necessitated these sacrifices have been removed by a new generation of hardware. In 2018, Rockstar demonstrated their mastery of the Rage engine through Red Dead Redemption 2. That game successfully managed extreme environmental density, complex animal AI, and deep character simulation simultaneously. The hardware jump is equally significant. Current consoles feature 16 gigabytes of RAM, a 30-fold increase over the 512 megabyte limit that constrained the previous decade of development. For the first time, Rockstar no longer has to choose between a massive map, complex physics, and interactive density. The hardware can now process all 3 at once. This brings the return of features lost to optimization cuts: functional drawbridges, complex robbery mechanics, active fitness systems, and unique NPC roles like beachfront lifeguards. GTA 6 represents the implementation of 2 decades of mechanical ambitions that were once technically impossible. With the hardware bottlenecks removed, Rockstar can finally build the density they've been forced to cut since the early 2000s.